this particular episode, it was cool, but I didn't like it.
Yeah, I liked it, but I thought that it was filler.
It was definitely filler.
But it was funny because, and I don't know if he's watching or not, or even listening in the background. But Connor and I watched it together. Doug couldn't; he had to leave before we had a chance to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
But we enjoyed it. But our overall thoughts were like his thought was that the takeaway is that the New Republic knows who he is, and that's significant, and that's going to be significant later on.
Mm-hmm.
Which I felt the same way. But my whole problem with it, like I thought it was a good episode. I actually like the fact that they're doing these almost like these adventure type episodes now. Because that was the idea behind The Mandalorian, is that he was going to go from planet to planet and have these different adventures. I didn't necessarily have a problem with the plot. My problem with it was I think it's too early for this kind of episode. You give us this spectacular opening episode,
Mm-hmm.
and it has all this stuff that, pertains to the overall story arc that we've been following since season 1. And there was really nothing that happened other than some disturbing things about Baby Yoda and the fact that the New Republic knows who Din is.
Mm-hmm.
And it also, I thought that the New Republic kind of had sort of a dark, sinister vibe to them.
Did you?
Yeah, you know who they kind of reminded me of in a way, which is kind of a weird reference to make, but I think it was at the end of 28 Days Later where they found the military base and they're like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. These guys are going to save us from the zombies. But those guys ended up being like there was something a little off about them, a little dark.
It's about the fact that they just flew off and just left them there.
Well, it wasn't that they flew off and left them there. I mean, they tried like raping and killing the chick. And then they basically like they were sort of cool at first, but you could tell there was something a little off about them, and then they just started to slowly turn against them. It was just that weird, like they weren't really the good guys kind of thing.
I mean,
I got a vibe from those dudes that was a little odd. And even if you actually listen to the conversation that they were having back and forth with Din when they were, when they first encounter him,
mm-hmm.
It was weird.
I didn't think it was weird. I mean, I just felt like they were just policing stuff. I thought they were really cool because honestly, they didn't want to shoot him down. They were
didn't, and I think that it's I don't know. There was just some like creepy vibe that I got from those guys.
They were just like, oh, we got a runner, and like another one. It's like, all right, here we go. I mean, I just felt like because they were just like, okay, they were just gonna let him like. Because Din was, that was just so funny just because Din was doing the typical thing. Like, I want to say if you got pulled over by the police or something.
Oh, yeah,
and
totally.
that's what made it so hilarious. He's like, no, I don't. He's like, well, this is the older thing. He's like, oh, well, this is New Republic now. He's like, all right, you know what? You're right. I'll work on that. And I'm like, all right, cool. Oh, yeah, one more thing. We need that ping or pick or whatever the heck they were asking for. And, of course, like, he was trying to, like, oh, yeah, no, I got it. It's right here. And then I guess something tipped them off. And then that's when he's realized.
Yeah, then he flies off or whatever. And there was that one part, too, where it was kind of like, well, oh, wait, here it is. Now it's working kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, exactly.
Like he got busted on. And that was cool. I mean, there was.
And I think when he was running from him, he was just like, oh, because I think he just realized, like, okay, crap, the New Republic. Because he remembers that whole prison thing that he did. So he was wondering, like, okay, this probably has something to do with that. Because if you remember, like, they saw him as he was flying away.
Yeah, by the way, I feel the need that I should mention this again. This is a spoiler discussion.
Oh. Yeah.
Not that there's really a whole lot to spoil in this episode, though.
I mean, yeah, it's not like
I mean, you could completely, like, we could actually act it out for everybody, and it would... Like, it wouldn't matter.
Because it was a filler episode.
And that's it. And that was my problem with it, is it doesn't even matter.
Yeah. And I think, to me, I felt like this episode wasn't necessary, just because it didn't advance the
Well,
story at
but
all, really. I mean, except for that point like you made, I will concede to that. That okay, yes, it does make us aware that the New
yeah,
Republic
but you have
knows
to
who he
admit
is.
though, it was kind of an exciting. I mean, it was like it was a.
It was cool, but
The
I mean,
problem is, I honestly think that you would like it if it wasn't the second episode of this anticipated second season.
yeah, I mean,
You introduced Boba Fett for crying out loud, and now you're giving us like space spiders
and frogs.
and frogs.
But the thing is, which is hilarious. I don't speak frog.
Oh yeah,
But
man. I mean, and that's the thing. I
don't get
like
me
the
wrong,
fact that the comedy is
comedy is cool. However, I just feel like there's too much, and maybe this is the price of knowing too much. When you know that, like, okay, you got Gideon's got this dark saber.
Yep.
You got pretty much Ahsoka is pretty much
That's
going to be.
exactly what Connor said today.
And then you got Boba Fett in this thing. It's like, okay, and we don't know why Gideon is why he wants Baby Yoda. So it's kind of like, all right, I would rather them at least focus on the character that we don't like. Okay, well, focus on Gideon then.
Well, that's the problem that I had, and this is what actually goes to my whole point is the fact that you only have like 8 episodes of the show,
And that's my whole thing. Now, one thing
season?
I will say, I will say, I'm thankful that like last week's episode was like 53, 54 minutes.
Oh yeah, and this was like 40 something.
41.
Yeah.
So they're all, if they're gonna play with the time, at least it's on the other side of 30 minutes. So I appreciate that so far. That much I do love so far.
Yeah, it's actually starting to look like we're gonna get longer episodes.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to.
Yeah. I mean, in order to tell these stories, either you're gonna get longer episodes or you're gonna have more episodes. It has to be one or the other.
Right. But I mean, and it's totally true. And I was feeling the same way, where it's kind of like, okay, you've got all this story you have to tell, and what pains me is like, they're probably gonna just like blow through some like really cool concept that they could spend time on.
Exactly.
If we didn't have like, little frogs with tadpoles and space spiders.
Exactly.
Let's see what Ronaldo says. He goes, I really liked it. I like episodes where Mando goes on his own adventures, different from the main story. The problem is that this type of episode we just saw last week. Yeah. I kind of agree. I agree with the overall point. I disagree with the fact that that's what we saw last week. But I could see where that could actually, I could see where people can make that criticism about last week's episode. I happen to feel that it advances the overall story arc very much.
I'm talking about
Last week's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially okay, when you got like Cobb Vanth, and then that was just cool. That was a surprise. I mean,
sure, that they actually put in a new canon novel character, and this really is talking about look, we admit that they probably teased Boba Fett in Chapter 5, but they didn't really expand on it. And then he's going off to look for Mandalorian. So now you had this guy who, in canon, actually has Boba Fett's armor. If you're dealing with the Mandalorian looking for other Mandalorians around this time period, you kind of have to deal with this.
Yeah, Ronaldo says, I found it very fun and exciting, and what I didn't make me dislike the whole episode. He also says, it's not a big deal, but the giant ant made me think, really? It doesn't seem very creative. It's just a giant ant. Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the things. It's like, okay, the creatures like, all right, you got a giant ant, a giant frog, and, it's like, so we've already seen a giant snake before. But I mean, my whole thing is this, like, I feel like with this particular episode, what was kind of like, it was cute at first, but like Baby Yoda keep trying to eat those stupid eggs was kind of like creepy to me.
Dude, it was never cute to me.
It was cute at first, like the very first.
No, here's the thing that was so funny. Like Connor and I were watching it, right? And we see how he's eyeing it, and Connor's like, he's gonna eat those eggs. I'm like, no way, dude. I'm like, he's not gonna eat them. I was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, because that would be too grim and gruesome and like, I mean, it just no way. And then he pops one in his mouth, and I'm like, no way, dude. They actually went there. I mean, that was like one of those things where it's just kind of like, you know, it showed somewhat of a darker, it was almost like the whole force choke thing, but it was even worse. It was almost like, it kind of reminded me of the Ewok thing where you saw some things where it was like, you know what? These creatures, I mean, besides the fact that they were about to cook them for a dinner, but, you know, you see like the stormtrooper helmet and you know those stormtroopers didn't meet just the typical, like they were probably part of the feast.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, that
little thing's carnivorous, man.
Well, yeah, it pretty much will eat. I mean, the thing is, like, for that thing to be so small, it has a healthy appetite because
sure does.
One of those giant, I mean, the egg was about the size of its head first and foremost, and then he didn't even like chew it. He just sucked that thing down. And then after that, like, he went over and he ate one of the little spider things, and then
dude, he is if you go across, you know, universe here and go into Star Trek, he is the Wesley Crusher of the show.
Oh yes, definitely.
You know, he gets everybody into trouble, and then it's kind of like,
but he has the ability to get you out sometimes.
Yeah, but he hasn't. If you think about it, he hasn't really shown that yet.
Well, yeah, I mean, because
I kind of thought when that one spider was attacking the ship, like it kind of looked like he was about to do something.
Well, yeah, you saw had his hands out, and then that's when the frog thing pulled out a blaster and shot it. But my whole thing is that whole egg thing, and it's like, okay, the first time I was like, okay, it's cute. It doesn't know. It's just whatever. Okay, I get it. But then it's like he keeps coming back. He keeps like creeping over to that thing. And I'm like, what the heck is this thing's problem? And then, of course, like afterwards, so like the very end, once again, it was like.
That was like heartbreaking.
Yeah.
To me,
and I'm just like.
It's like, you know, she's all like, you know, you could see she's like loving and cuddling. And then, you know, he kind of looks and then he's like.
Yeah, especially, you know, he's the kind of, and the thing, he knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing.
Because he's looking around and he's like.
But see, again, and that's another big takeaway that I don't think is accidental. What I have to say is that I trust Favreau and Filoni enough to feel that, and I said this to Connor today too, I said, even though this kind of feels like a filler episode, and if you just take it on its own for what it is, well, we're only at the second episode, so we only know from last episode and this episode, totally fits the bill of filler. I have a feeling that we're going to find out later on. It's not, I think it's deceptively filler. I think that there's a lot of key things that we're going to look back on this episode and go, you know what?
Oh.
Now I get it. And you're going to find out that this episode is probably more, what I called it wasn't filler, it was establishment. It's an establishing episode. And I'm like, the problem with establishing episodes is they could seem like filler, but they're not. They basically are establishing things that are going to come up and actually be very important later on. My problem is I just wish it hadn't been so early in the season. But then again, if it is an establishment thing, then, you know, and they only have 8 episodes, well, you got to set it up now.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like Ronaldo's like.
Well, he's testing my knowledge of Spanish, which
yeah,
sadly,
actually, I think that
I didn't do so well in high school with.
Well,
but what he did put is I split on this one.
Let's do the English one.
On one hand, I find it adorable when Baby Yoda ate the eggs, but on the other hand, he was literally wiping out an entire race.
Yeah,
exactly.
Man. It's like the last right.
And she's like, you know, it's this whole desperate plea that she's like, look, I'm trying to get to my husband. I got my this, you know, and then like on top of that, like she's bathing in this, you know, the waters of Lake Minnetonka in the back, you know, with her eggs floating around. And then once again, he's like, ooh, and he's walking over to him. He keeps trying to, and he's like, no. You know, it's just like a bad dog or something.
Well, and the other thing that it was funny when, you know, when we were watching it, you know, Connor brings up, he's like, okay, at what point does he stopped being like this and becomes a,
Right, yeah.
like, because Yoda wouldn't do that.
Right. But see, that's the other thing too, though. It's like we don't necessarily know. Because it's like, it's funny because it behaves like a child because it is a child. So it's like, when it was time to like, when the hole was all broken up and it was time to go to sleep, and he crawls up on the Mandalorian and kind of lays on like
Yeah,
Dad.
I mean,
Once again, or he'll walk over to him.
Kids do know when they're doing something wrong, but they do it anyway because they're not necessarily, they know it's wrong, but they're not really thinking of all the ramifications, all the consequences. I mean, that little thing's not thinking of the fact that the mother is, I mean, it's
this harboring food,
But it's like, is this the Damien of, the Star Wars universe?
And that's what I'm saying. We don't know what this Yoda, quote unquote, is going to become. Like, what if this is like a whole dark side Yoda that we don't even know about?
Well, that was kind of the thing I was thinking about it, man. I mean, it was like one of those things where I was starting to think of like, hey, maybe that little depiction of the dark side Yoda artwork or whatever, that I don't even remember where that came from, but whatever it was super cool. It was actually my wallpaper for a while. Yeah. Are we going to get a dark side version of Yoda? Are we going to stop calling him Baby Yoda and call him Dark Side Yoda?
Yeah. Darth Yoda.
Yeah, Ronaldo says, sorry, wrong language. My dad actually spoke it pretty fluently, though.
Oh, sweet.
You'd probably interpret it. But, yeah, I mean, I think that overall, I think it was good.
So we can say, though, it was an Ilium that they didn't land on, though.
Yeah, well, they were supposed to go to Trask. Yeah.
But that other plane,
Well, because remember, this sort of came up because the Tatooine lady was all like, hey, could you, take this woman,
Yeah.
I
trust her with my life. I'm a good character. I mean, she's hilarious. I love her, actually.
Yeah, it was funny because at first, I remember when she first popped up in 5, I didn't hate her, but I was like, she might be kind of annoying. But now she's kind of cool. It's sort of like
she's kind of like the new Quill in a way.
Yeah. Yep. Ronaldo.
Oh, yeah. When Baby Yoda ate that egg at the end, I was like, ouch, that's evil. I know.
Totally evil,
because I'm like, that's what I'm saying. Like, it was like, he's like looking around, and I'm thinking like, okay, he finally learned his lesson, and then he still pops
it kind of like, yeah. I mean, it's just like, that was the thing. It was kind of like when he looked at the lady frog and then basically was kind of like, okay, she's like, hugging her tadpoles or eggs or whatever, and it's kind of like, okay, he could kind of see like, and then he kind of has that look and he pops one in his mouth. I'm like, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody wants to like give him a whooping.
These things?
Yeah. Well, see, my thing is too is like, one, like, where are you putting that? Like, you're like this big. Like Baby Yoda's like this. It's like it's like a foot tall.
Well, he definitely seemed a lot hungrier this episode because first he ate like 6 eggs or something, and then he goes and he sees the spider eggs. Like, and to him that was like a buffet, man. I mean, he was all like wide-eyed and and everything, and he's going up and he like breaks that out and eats, and it's like I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, this thing will eat anything. I mean, pulling out this spider thing and it's all goopy and gross, and I'm like, what don't you eat?
Well, I mean, just like when he ate that whole little frog thing on Quill's planet.
See, all I can say is when Yoda looked at Luke and say, I don't know how you got so big eating food of this kind, I'm like, really, man? Really?
Yep.
Well, but here's the funny thing, though, is that Yoda was making like stews and...
Yeah, but you don't know what was in that thing, though.
Luke was all about it, though, remember?
No, he just kind of just ate it because I guess that's all he had to.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess, not a lot of culinary options. And not to mention the fact that, who knows what he's killing over there on Dagobah, man. I mean, there's like all kinds of stuff.
You got snakes crawling through his little hut and everything. So
that would be like the mecca for Baby Yoda.
Oh, yeah, he'd be all about that.
He'd be eating that. I mean, there'd be nothing left on that planet by the time he was done.
Talk about being vegan.
Well, I mean, but then look at all the carnivorous life on that thing.
Ronaldo says, those spider eggs gave me alien vibes.
Yes.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, I even said that to when Connor and I were trying to figure out like what they were, because we knew that there was some. I'm like, I don't know, man. It like because he was like he guessed it was a giant spider, and I'm like, yeah, it has to be something like that because it kind of looks like alien. And one of the coolest scenes I thought was when Din actually caught it and crushed. Like one of the spiders jumped at it and he caught it, and just like crushed it.
But he's going to town with that flamethrower, though. Now that's the time you use it.
Well, that was the thing. I'm surprised it took him that long. Because, first they're like blasting, and I'm like, why don't you just use a flamethrower, man? I mean, you've been using it like for everything.
One of the things I did, enjoy was that whole little move that he pulled at the very beginning when they tried to, he tried to kill the baby Yoda, and then he gave him his jetpack.
Oh yeah,
I knew that was coming, but I was just like,
he was a little bit too, he
was way too
cooperative.
Calm. He said, "Look, oh yeah, you want it? Cool.
Yeah, okay."
He waited till he got the safe distance and just shot him straight up in the air,
and shot him right down.
Yep.
Yeah, that was actually I thought was pretty smooth.
But
I mean,
honestly,
I will say the Mandalorian was actually kind of cool in this.
I mean, it had cool things. Like, I mean, I will say, like, when those guys tried to, jump him, pretty much that whole, like, rope trick, like, that they use in Return of the Jedi.
Yep.
And I'm just, like, seeing Baby Yoda going fly. I'm like, honestly, at the speed that they were going, I mean, both of them should have been, like, out of there. But, it's the Mandalorian.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. It's kind of like and again, it was such a cool opening that it really gave you hope on what the episode was going to be. And that's the thing that was a little bit heartbreaking about it.
Well, that's what I was saying. And when we were talking about, like, the harsh things about Tatooine, because, like, okay, I'm just thinking about what it would be like to be the Mandalorian. Like,
well, yeah, we were talking about that too. Like, does he have, like, refrigeration in that suit? Because
it's like, all right, you're already on Tatooine. That thing is beaten down. You don't take your helmet off.
Right.
So it's like, and you're all metal, like you're in steel.
That helmet would seriously need like some disinfectant.
And you already still got the acid on it from like,
oh man,
the crate dragon still on that thing.
I can't even begin to imagine what it would be like to.
And so he had to fight a bunch of those guys, and then it's like, all right, now you got.
He should have been the one bathing in that little Minnetonka
little spa. Yeah,
yeah, right.
Yeah, but then like he had to pick up like everything, and then he's carrying like that big hunk of like dragon meat. He's got all his tools. He's got the baby, and he's just trekking across this desert. I mean, like he's got to be worn out, man. I mean, just from the
other thing I didn't understand too is why not use the jetpack?
Yeah.
It's like, dude, I mean, granted, it probably wouldn't last too long, but it would
get you,
get you a little bit quicker,
Yeah, at least cut down the time a little bit.
So Ronaldo was,
yeah, I love the
Krykna spiders.
The Krykna spiders, yeah.
That was cool. So you actually, the name of them. Very impressive.
Yeah, a little Jason menu, I see.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing, too. It's like, where was that listed?
Well, the spiders?
Yeah. Did somebody actually say it?
And by the way, no matter what Kanan says, if I see one of those spiders, I run for my life.
Yeah, well, that was the thing that I said actually during the whole time that I was watching it too.
Yeah, as soon as I
said that came out, I'm like, first of all, I wouldn't have even made it. I would have died of cardiac arrest. Because, I mean, if you just actually put yourself in the situation.
The baby spiders freaked me out, let alone
the baby spiders. And then when that big thing comes out, it's like, really, man? I mean, if you actually saw that in real life, or like the crate dragon, the thing comes out, if you saw that in real life, you would basically just die of shock.
Absolutely.
There'd be no way. You'd be petrified. Now, granted, I get it. In this universe, these people are dealing with this stuff all the time.
Right.
But if I see a bear, I'm probably going to freak out.
Right.
If I saw some spider that looked like that, then it, opened up and had all his teeth. I mean, if I even just saw an earth spider, crap, that ant in the cantina would have freaked me out.
Yeah, he was a doctor.
Exactly. You know, and he was just like this normal, cool guy or whatever. But I'd be like,
I'm about to grab some Raid or something.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But, you know, again, I thought it was a good episode if you just take it for what it is. I just felt it was a little too early for an episode like that, even though I am fully putting my money on the fact that it was an establishing episode more than a filler episode, and that 3-4 episodes down the line, we're probably, by the way, it's a drinking game every time I say episode. 3 or 4 episodes down the line, we're probably going to look back on this and go, you know, now I understand why they had this in there. But I have to say that, especially because we can't binge these things, like it'd be different if you just like gave us the entire season at once.
Right.
But I mean, this is like terrible, man. I mean, it's like, okay, we gotta
wait a whole nother week.
Yeah, now we gotta wait a whole nother week for this.
Yeah, and hope that, you know, it's actually like, okay, we get back to the main story type of situation.
Yeah, and I've got, you know, I mean, the thing that's funny is I'm gonna be setting up on this job all next Friday, so it's like I'm probably gonna have to like watch the episode right before we go on or something. You know, because one of the things that we're doing, by the way, in case, I mean, you guys might have caught on, but, well, last week it was basically our main topic. Like, we just talked about the whole season premiere and everything, what ended up becoming Chapter 9, but it was actually Episode 1. Now, for the first segment of the Cantina every week, we're going to talk about
Mandalorian.
Yeah, the Mandalorian. So I'm really hoping that, well, hopefully, you know, we're actually going live at 8 o'clock next week. But we'll, just so you guys know, you know, that could be up in the air. But, you know, it just bothers me that you wait a week and then you see an episode like this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking, hopefully, like, next week we're definitely back on the...
Well, they have to be. Now you're on an episode 3 of an 8-episode thing. I mean, they almost have to be.
Yep.
What was the title of it? I remember last week you gave us all the titles.
Well,
today was The Passenger.
Yeah, today was The Passenger. But, you know, they're not... I was thinking of those, too. And, of course, these aren't matching up, so...
Oh, so was the second episode called something different? Mm-hmm. Now yeah. That was, like, obviously a pre-release thing.
Yeah.
Well, like you said, man, hopefully next week they just knock it out of the park with something really cool. Again, I mean, I can't say that in the grand scheme of things. Like, I have a feeling that if I go back and rewatch this after the whole season's been released, I'll probably enjoy it. It's a really good, fun, cool adventure-type episode.
Mm-hmm.
But watching this in a first-run situation...
Yeah,
this is kind of disappointing for me. But what about you guys? What do you guys think? You know, you see where Daryl and I stand on this. Were you guys satisfied with this episode? Did you like it or did you not like it? Let us know in the comments.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.